There are 3.5 million members of the Arab diaspora in the United States. And when I was in Washington recently, I met with Dr. James Zogby, and he's the president and founder of the Arab American Institute.
We started the Institute 26 years ago now to empower Arab Americans in politics and to take Arab Americans, once they're in politics, and form a network out of them, that is elected officials, party leaders, people from governors and senators all the way down to city councilmen and precinct workers, and to form a network of them so they could share their expertise with each other. And we've also been very successful in being able to export some of that talent to the Arab world, which is so in need of that kind of political experience.
How big is the Arab diaspora? How do you define it?
Well, there are about 3.5 million Arab Americans. We don't consider ourselves a diaspora. I think I could say it that way. Most of us are in our first, second, third generation born here. The biggest wave of immigrants came before World War I, so we've been here for quite a while. Most Arab Americans, about maybe 3/4, are born here and feel very strongly attached to America. They also have a connection, both emotional and in some cases spiritual, to lands of origin, and feel very strongly that they want to give back. But I think 3.5 million plus is about the right number to work with.
And how different or similar is the Arab diaspora to other diasporas?
I think in many ways similar. I have been for a long time chair of the Ethnic Council in the Democratic Party, and I'm always struck by the fact that when we're sitting together, Irish, Italian, Polish, Eastern Central European, the Mediterranean, what we call ourselves, the Turks and others in that region, how similar the experiences are. The why folks came, what they learned when they came, relationships back to the countries of origin, and the difference in the generational concerns, which are really interesting, how the immigrant generation has one view, and the children, the ones born here, integrate both that sense of attachment to country of origin, but also a real sense of seeing the world through American eyes. America is a transformative country. You don't only become American, it changes you like an alchemy. And I think that I find in all the ethnic communities some very similar threads.
How can that power and influence and success of the Arab diaspora in the United States you've articulated, how can that be harnessed for their home countries?
Well, I think it is in small ways, and hopefully now with what we're calling the Arab Spring in larger ways. Arab American business people do business in the Middle East. We've been able to tap into, as I said, the elected officials and party leaders to help support fledgling democracies, civil society projects in many countries in the Middle East. I think it's going to increase even more so now. And we have a project that we're working on now with Arab American business people, working with the White House and others, to find ways of not only pooling the resources and the talent here, but also finding the resources of government, from Trade Development Agency to SIPE to the OPEC, folks who have resources and skills here, and folks in the government who can sort of grease the skids and make some of these projects that are in the idea phase a reality. But I know people working on big ideas for Egypt, big ideas for Lebanon. Hopefully when the Palestinian situation opens up, even bigger ideas there. A lot can happen. The question is, we've needed the environment to be right to make it happen, and hopefully that environment is being created while we speak.
What's the role of the home governments or institutions to help accelerate this process?
Well, like I said, the projects are taking place, and people are investing. There's no question about it. In the Gulf, for example, we have a lot of Arab American business people doing business in UAE and Qatar, countries where there has been a receptivity, in Saudi Arabia as well. They've done business in Jordan. Palestinian Americans have tried to do business in the West Bank and Gaza. It's been very difficult. if you can't import and export, if Israel keeps the border closed and doesn't allow freedom of movement for Palestinian entrepreneurs in the territories, it's very hard to ask businessmen to take the risk. The market there is too small if they don't have access to the outside world. Lebanon, a lot of business and exchange back and forth between Lebanese Americans and Lebanon. We haven't seen that much elsewhere. What we're hoping now, as things begin to open up, is that you'll get not just governments there more receptive, but you'll also get more excitement here at this side, and have it not be country specific. So I'm already seeing Egyptian American business people talking about major projects in Lebanon, or Lebanese Americans exploring the market in Egypt, which is of course one of the biggest markets in the Middle East. And so I think we're going to see more of that as the situation opens up, and they feel governments there will be more receptive, more responsive, and more transparent, all of which is necessary for real business to take place.
What do you think can be learned from the experience of other diasporas? Anything, and indeed have we anything to learn from the Arab experience?
Well, I think we have always something to learn from each other. I did Builders for Peace with Vice President Gore in the 1990s, and I think one of the things that was so exciting about that was bringing together Arab American and American Jewish business people. What I found was that when we sat to talk politics, we disagreed. When people talked business, on the other hand, it was as if sparks were going off, but sparks of a good kind, that ignited really exciting ideas that ended up translating into business opportunities that maybe could not have taken place in the West Bank and Gaza, but you had people partnering to do things in other parts of the world. When businessmen sit together, businessmen and women I should say, sit together, exciting things can happen. And so I think that certainly we can learn from what European business folks have done. We can learn from some of the successful ways that that folks have done work in Asia, especially the Indian American community. And so I'm looking forward to learning more and seeing business folks from the Arab community sit and interact with people from other parts of the world, because I think we've got a lot to learn, and the experiences can be quite beneficial from place to place.
And when you look into your crystal ball, 10 years from now, where do you think this could all be?
Well, I can't imagine the Middle East not being changed positively. I think that we're going to see, in some cases, very rapid, in other cases, slower transformation. But I think the Middle East is being changed for the better, and it is irreversible. I think 10 years from now, we'll be looking at a much more open, much more integrated, much more market-friendly Middle East.
And the role of the diaspora in that?
I think the role of the diaspora is going to be rather significant. You're going to see Arab American business people and Arab emigres to other parts of the world feeling that this is the place I can bring my business, this is the place I can bring my resources. You look at what Lebanese and Palestinian business folks have done in Central and South America. They are huge in terms of both the capacity, the experience, and the leadership they've provided in transforming the economies in many parts of this hemisphere. They have done so because opportunities have been closed to them back in the countries of origin. The fact that they could, be elected to the presidencies of 7 or 8 South and Central American countries and be the major industrialist, that one of the richest people in the world is a Mexican American of Lebanese origin, followed closely behind by others who are also of Lebanese and Syrian descent in the Americas, means that there's talent there, there's resources there. They have only done their work in that part of the world because they have not felt it was possible to do the kind of work they want to do in the country of their origin. And so when the countries open up, when they become more market friendly, more transparent, and more free, you're going to see a whole lot more work being done. And I think it's just an exciting period of time.
And finally, what can America do, either at an official government level or an individual corporate foundation level, to accelerate this process?
Well, I think that what I found during Builders for Peace is that you have these little gems throughout the U.S. government that people don't know about. want to do some investing in different parts of the world, they don't know that you can get a feasibility study done in partnership with Trade Development Agency, or you can get risk insurance, or you can get loan guarantees provided through OPEC, or you can have the Foreign Commercial Office provided by the folks at the Department of Commerce help you work your way through some of the minefields in the countries you want to go into. So I think when business people know what resources are available already, and when those resources are brought to the table and people can get questions they have answered and security that they need provided, they are much more willing to do some more interesting things than would ordinarily happen if they didn't know that if they didn't have those resources available to them.
I think just an auxiliary question. I mean, John Hume once said in Derry, he said, you know, you can't eat a flag. Doesn't matter what flag you got if you can't put food on the table for your family. In other words, if you don't have a job, you know, all else is kind of irrelevant. Does that apply as well?
Well, look, we've just gone through a political revolution in the Middle East. Next will come as a friend of mine refers to it, the revolution of the hungry. If the hope that has been created in Egypt doesn't translate into jobs, there could be a movement in a very negative direction in that country. People will respond in despair. They will respond in hunger. And they will respond to leaders who may not have the message that continues on the path to openness and freedom. And so the time for change is now, and the world has to step up to the plate. Egypt cannot, should not survive on handouts, just as the Palestinian economy should not depend upon handouts. They need to open their economies. I think that they are open, willing to be open. The question is, will business people from around the world step up, go in, invest, work with these new markets, and create the jobs that have to be created in order to give people a sense that this revolution worked, and that there's reason to continue on the right path.